Hello and welcome to the FIDO Alliance Google Case Study webinar. My name is Tasha Silva and I am the event specialist for the FIDO Alliance. Before we begin today's webinar, I'd like to point out a few items. The webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded onto our website by the end of this week. All attendees are and will remain in listen-only mode. We ask that if you have any questions, to place them within the question pane located on the control panel. Once our webinar has concluded, we will make every effort to answer as many questions as possible. I would now like to take the opportunity to introduce our panelists who are conducting today's webinar. Julie Beck, Marketing Lead for the FIDO Alliance. Julian Blanchez, Group Marketing Manager with Google. John Fontana, Identity Evangelist with Yubico. And Donal O'Shea with the FIDO Alliance.
All right, this is John Fontana. I'm the working group co-chair at the FIDO Alliance, and also I work for Yubico. Give you a little introduction this morning. Thanks for joining us. Well, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Give a little introduction to FIDO, and then I'll pass it on to Julian. You can see here we've got the slide 220 global member organizations. Our mission here is really to end the reliance on passwords, which are kind of showing themselves as the weakest security link going these days. We have open technology standards, the FIDO specs, and the end goal is simpler and stronger authentication. Target markets are consumers and citizens, governments, and businesses. Next slide, please. Here's a list of our board members. This slide needs a little update. American Express should be on this slide. You can see the diversity of our board and our membership, services and networks, devices, platforms, vendors. They're all there. Next slide, please. So here's sort of a three-part look at our mission: develop the specifications. That's our current FIDO 1.0 specification. That was released late last year. We have a series of adoption programs. The one we've most recently added was the FIDO Alliance Liaison Program, where we're reaching out to other standards bodies and creating a link between what we're doing and what they're doing, and how strong two-factor authentication may play in with their communities. We also have a certification program. We have a FIDO metadata service that lines up with the FIDO UAF spec, and there are FIDO marketing and education programs that put on webinars such as this one, seminars, conference talks, and other sorts of outreach. Next slide, please. So here's really what we're trying to solve. We're not trying to build an identity and access management framework. We're looking specifically in the stack at authentication. Up till now, that's mostly been passwords. And modern authentication, we have, you look at this slide, we're talking authenticators that are phones and biometrics and other devices, dongles, and things. Next slide, please. So here's a look at the timeline for FIDO. You can see that from February 2013, when the Alliance was announced, till today, we've really grown membership at a pretty rapid rate. We've had these milestones along the way. Our FIDO Ready program, which has now been eclipsed by our FIDO certification program, which came online in May of 2015. Our specification review drafts there in February of 2014, and first deployments shortly thereafter. In June, we added, I'm sorry, I missed the FIDO 1.0 specs there that were released formally in December of 2014. And then this past June, we added new U2F transports for Bluetooth and NFC. And today we're seeing a broad adoption, and we'll look at that in some other slides. Next slide, please. So here's 2014, PayPal, the Alibaba Group, and Google launched support for FIDO 1.0 specifications. and this created some buzz in the marketplace, and was really you know, the early adopters that were getting in. And then this year, you know, if you can switch to the next slide, please. You can see that things have accelerated. We have looked at 2015 as the year of the adoption, and Microsoft announced some things around their Windows 10 that's since shipped. Google deepened their commitment, and we'll hear more about that from Julian with Google for Work. Docomo came on board in China, and I'm sorry, excuse me, Docomo came online in Japan, and Dropbox and Bank of America and GitHub have adopted FIDO 1.0 specs here within the last 3 months, well, last 2 months. Next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier the certification program, and this has become a big effort for FIDO. We have, I think, 64 FIDO certification products that are now in, or FIDO certified products that are now in market, and we have another certification testing session coming up here. I think it's the next couple of months. So this is a way of when the products get into market that consumers know that these FIDO products have gone through a series of tests to be certified to act the way that we expect them to act, that you expect them to act. Next slide, please. Here's just a list of some of the products that are in market. They're not all represented here, unfortunately. You can see the logo at the top is what you'll see on FIDO products that carry certification, either with the U2F or the UAF spec. Next slide, please. And here's just a little bit about the certification process. There's more on the website. There's a URL there down in the lower left side. This is open to anyone. The goal is to ensure interoperability and to promote the FIDO ecosystem. There is a fee for this, and you can, like I said, you can learn more at that URL about how we certify our products, or how to get products that you develop certified. Next slide, please. Also new in 2015, we opened our membership up to, we started to create some vertical stacks. We added governments, and the US and the UK were first to come on, and they were followed by the German Federal Office for Information Security and the China Academy for Telecommunications Research. And this government vertical augmented an education vertical that we had done earlier in 2014. And some of those, if you look at our membership, you can see some of the EDUs that have signed on, and we have a list of those going. Next slide, please. Next slide. So we are still accepting members. We'd love to have anybody who's interested in FIDO join the FIDO ecosystem and come and help us develop the evolution of these protocols. Next slide, please. So I guess the message here is you know, join the FIDO Alliance, or at least to take a good long look at it and what we have to offer. You know, the goal here, simpler, stronger authentication.
So good morning, as Julian was saying, or good afternoon. I don't know where you all are. So my name is Julian Blanchet, and I've been in charge of security and privacy marketing for Google for Work. Working at Google for the last 7 years, really, focusing on some of these matters. But the focus I want to keep today for the next 30 minutes or so, and then leaving some time for Q&A, is to share with you how we look at security from within Google, and how does the FIDO U2F key and, you know, the development of that technology and the adoption of that technology fits into that vision. So with John from Yubico here on the call, I think we'll be happy to share how Google and Yubico, you know, have collaborated within FIDO really to help make Google a very early adopter of U2F and the technology, how we are currently working together to promote that actively, and and maybe also what we can expect this to become, this technology to become in the near future. So maybe we can go to the next slide. Yep. So my job at Google is really to help answer most efficiently these two burning questions. These are really the two questions that everybody asks when they consider putting the data into the cloud. The first one is very clear, it's an objective matter. You're breached or you're not. Security is quite a mature field, and it's a very technical debate and discussion that we have. This is really the focus of today. What is important to keep in mind, I think, is that this first question is really a prerequisite to be able to even enter the debate about the second one, which is a very fast-moving topic at the moment, very more subjective, more culturally tainted. But really, what matters, end of the day, is how do you protect the rights, the natural rights that we all have to protect the privacy of our data online, and how do we do this, as technology and culture evolves around this digital transformation. So, onto the next slide, we understand that it is critical to answer these questions because the landscape is changing very fast at the moment, and what used to be reassuring certainties, like the strength of nation states protecting our information, has actually become a question mark, and this is not just public service organizations that threaten, but every single IT landscape in the world is actually having these question marks. The reason why this has changed is really for three reasons. The first is the risk has increased drastically recently. There is much more data than before. The data is much more personal than before. It's sometimes real time. It is blending physical and virtual worlds, and so very definitely everybody perceives that there is a real risk out there for individuals and companies. The second is that we see everyone and our customers, others, users being overwhelmed with the current complexity of security. It used to be that you were defending yourself against a teenager in a basement, or at best a team of them in a loft. But these days, you're actually facing nation states and armies, and they will attack your small company. They will attack your personal accounts, and it has become really close to impossible for companies for whom it is not the core business to defend themselves properly against this. And we see this as a role that we can play as large cloud providers in protecting our customers. But the way work has changed also hasn't made things more easy. Users expect technology to really blend into their personal lives, and if you give them tools that are more complex or more constraining, that's what they use in their private life, they will circumvent you, and this is definitely true when it comes to security. So moving to the next slide, we see that all these things haven't made your life easier if you're in charge of security, or if you're accountable for the data protection of your organization's data. We're faced with the traditional areas of attacks, and with the standard on-premise or legacy landscape, you have really big questions to answer now on how do you protect the data on all these devices, scattered on all these devices that get lost so often, and that all of a sudden are really now the prey of these attacking elements. How much resource do you really have to protect the perimeters of your data centers and of your servers? When it comes to network penetration and protecting your network, how many InfoSec gurus do you have on your payroll, to be ready for these attacks when they come from these smart guys coming from abroad? And lastly, considering insider threats, how comprehensive, how embedded into your culture are, your HR policies and your logs to prevent and make sure that employees behave as good stewards of your data or your customers' data. This is becoming an increasing threat, and this is part should be an increasing part of every company's culture. On the next slide, we see that the fact that the traditional AIT landscape is being overwhelmed by this new reality, by these new threats, is really to be seen almost daily in the press. What is really surprising, if you observe these breaches, is that no one really picked up publicly on the fact that none of these breaches relate to large cloud public providers. These are all breaches that took place in the last month, and they were all targeting legacy traditional IT infrastructure. So on the next slide, this is really these kinds of evidence in a way is part of what helped us to you could almost dare to say come out of the closet in a way, and start to dare to say something that we really we're not advocating previously, but it has now become much more intuitive for everybody to understand that the cloud is not only a very smart way to decrease your costs and increase the flexibility of your operations, but at the same time, it is the way to increase your security. And if you hear some reports that if you're a company bigger than 2,500 employees, in the next 12 months, your chance is 80% or higher that you will suffer an attack. Being able to benefit from the protection of a professional provider that invests at scale to protect your data is definitely a way to consider. Of course, this comes with a lot of responsibility for large cloud providers. How do we make sure that we're always on the cutting edge of technology and always implement things that bring the best protection to the data you entrust with us? So on the next slide, I want to talk a little bit over once it has become more easy to understand, as it has become more easy to understand for most of us, that the cloud is a safe place, even and probably your safest bet today when it comes to protecting your data. Google also specifically, as Google, we believe we have specific advantages and specific characteristics that allow us to provide a very high level of security. And these really have to do with the way we innovate in technology, the scale that we have achieved, and the agility and the speed with which the company operates, and that really is baked into our culture. Even if that doesn't make my wife very happy every evening, but that's how we operate. On the next slide, I first want to tackle technology, and though we do not have time here to go into details about some of the specific things that makes Google's infrastructure so secure, I think it is important to keep in mind and be aware that all of the innovation that you see in the press, in the media about Google pushing the boundaries, would it be of driverless cars or free wireless connection from balloons hovering in the sky, etc. The same kind of drive for innovation actually lives into our security teams, and you should really you should be aware, and you should know that this is the same company, and these security teams are pushing their respective boundaries in the very same way. And this is one of the things that we are discussing today, actually, a specific topic we're discussing today. Another important factor is to realize that as a cloud provider, we are probably the only cloud provider that has such a deep visibility over the entire technology stack. So from the chips that we design ourselves on the motherboards of our servers to the servers that we manufacture for ourselves. We are one of the largest server manufacturers in the world just for our own purpose. The network that we lay and the fiber that we lay for our own purpose, sometimes across oceans, to the applications that we develop, almost to the and eventually to the UI of the mobile device that you use. We have a complete span of visibility, which allows us to detect very fast and react also very fast, and probably faster than most, to counter counterattack. So this is something that makes our job a little easier when it comes to securing your information. Second is scale on the next slide. And scale matters in security. What you see here is a picture of what we call the digital attack map. It's a Google project that shows in real time distributed denial of service attacks across the world. And I'm sorry I didn't get clearance to give you the exact number of the largest DDoS attack that we were able to defend ourselves against. I think this would have given a too nice objective for some people around there. But the size of attacks that we're able to withstand daily is very impressive, for the most experienced professional. And we actually offer this also as a free service to media companies and free speech organizations around the world that are constantly offered, attacked by this very cheap way of bringing sites down. They can come onto our infrastructure, and we host them to be able to let them operate without being attacked by others. This is just talking about the scale of the infrastructure, and most important is probably the people investments. Google has more than 500 info security engineers, many of whom have actually written the books on their respective disciplines, also in, specifically in security. And this is also very relevant for this very topic. The engineers that we had working within the FIDO Alliance on U2F are the world experts in these matters, and they are really putting their wheel to the shoulder, their shoulder to the wheel, sorry, to bring this technology forward. Now, on the next slide, I just want to say a word about agility, and say that 500 InfoSec engineers is impressive by all means, but it's not nearly enough, to counter. So the way we collaborate with the broader security and research community, incentivizing all hackers really to attack us, any of our systems, day in, day out. We basically make them famous, we call them out publicly, positively, and we make them rich. We paid more than $4 million already in rewards for hackers that had been successful in finding vulnerabilities in our system and told us about it. So this tradition that we have to engage with the broader audience and make these technologies and these findings public for all to use is something that is very characteristic also of the way Google operates, and also has been very has been one of the ways that we engage with the FIDO Alliance in the past years to collaboratively build that technology and then adopt it very fast. On the next slide, I want to say a word how basically the combination of these factors, technology, scale, agility, and have really been instrumental in how Google in the past has tackled some of the great security challenges that it was facing. And if you were around on the web in the 90s, you probably remember that moment where you were thinking, spam is going to bring this whole thing down. I mean, email has become completely used. It's become so pervasive spam has become so pervasive that email has become almost useless. Now, spam has never ceased to increase. Actually, there's never been more spam on the web than today. Spam increases by 2 to 5% per year. The reality is that technology has become much better at filtering this and providing you a good service and getting rid of the bad actors, really, or putting them on the side. So on the malware side also, though this is still very prevalent out there, Google operates in an open manner a database called VirusTotal that makes public and distributes to anyone who wants to use it and can use it. One of the biggest database of malware that is available out there, and definitely from an encryption point of view, we have always pushed encryption as a tool to protect our communications and your communications as users and customers against eavesdropping, and we have definitely doubled down on that since a few years after revelations came out of government attacks on some of our systems and other systems. So on the next slide, though we certainly do not pretend that we initiated or even instigated any of all of these security improvements that took place recently, it is certainly correct to say that we have a tradition at Google to support and put our shoulder to the wheel, to say it correctly this time, when it comes to accelerate and facilitate adoption of meaningful security technology. And this time, this collaboration with the FIDO Alliance is no exception to that. So to go on to that now on the second part of my little talk here on the next slide, I want to say why we stepped into this effort and how we deployed that technology. So it is a well-known fact for any observer and anybody active in the security world that the theft of login credentials is the biggest threat online today. So but I think in 2014 you will read several reports that relate to close to 1 billion accounts being breached, and 2/3 to maybe 3/4, depending on the reports, of these breaches were caused by theft of login credentials. So the risk was getting very high. So the risk was really getting too high for us, and when we saw appearing advanced phishing methods that were actually capable of capturing even one-time passwords that were entered by users on fake two-step authentication login screens, we knew that we needed to find more protection. And Google had been looking at these things for a while on its own, and then decided to join the FIDO Alliance to help contribute and join this development of different protocols to solve that authentication problem, help solve that authentication problem. So in 2013, we decided to roll out the U2F FIDO security key. And actually, at the time, it's only manufactured or mainly manufactured by Ubico, and we rolled this out to all of our users. And with as goal really to increase the security of our authentications and our operations. This rollout was remarkably frictionless, and almost came as a surprise for users and IT, our IT staff. The feedback was completely positive and almost emotional. So we were hearing things like, "I love this key," written on the surveys, which is definitely not something you would have ever heard from a dongle, right? I love my dongle is not something that sounds right, but I love this key is something that came very, very frequently in the feedback. So that's when we quickly decided to roll this out externally to all of our users. First sensitive users, really, activists, reporters, international reporters that often rely on Gmail for its proven security and capability to resist to nation-state attacks. Providing them with that extra level of security was something we wanted to do fast, and we did this in late 2014. And that's when we saw a snowball effect really take place. As we had made this completely technically available, but only communicated. Let's say we didn't communicate very loud in a very loud way about it. But we saw large companies, some of the largest of our Google Apps customers, really starting to roll out this technology to their installed base. And really and we didn't have any tools at the time to help them do that. They were doing this manually to hundreds and thousands of users, and that's how we decided to follow suit really and release in June of 2015 this year a set of administrative tools to allow IT managers to deploy keys at scale and manage these keys at scale. So I want to go on the next slide and talk a little bit about the convenience again. You remember that convenience was one of the main things I brought up at the start of the talk when it comes to fitting with your user's expectation. And convenience is really 50% of the success of that technology. It is almost a prerequisite for the effectiveness of security, and that is why we moved quickly from recommending or pushing the traditional key that you saw on the previous slide to this nano format, which always lives into the USB slots, which drastically improves the effectiveness of the ease of use of the login process, and is really part of what made the success of that technology. On the next slide, I want to share how, even though this is really not part of our business, we are selling other stuff, and it is not easy to diffuse marketing, from its main task, which is to support the business. But in view of the success and the really positive impact that this technology has on our customers and the broader ecosystem on the web, we decided that we will allocate some of our marketing to support and support the deployment and the adoption of that technology. In July, we pushed a social campaign, and that you see an example of, which has been very successful, and we started to systematically recommend the deployment of FIDO U2F keys to all of our prospects and customers. What is interesting about this marketing activity is that we realized that such a simple physical device all of a sudden made the communication around security much more enticing and much more positive. If we take an example, this campaign in July, which people were very nervous about because you don't like to talk about something as negative or scaring as security through your marketing channels, actually turned out to be one of the most successful social campaigns we ever did with Google for Work, we really see that there is a clear need for more security and a clear appetite out there to understand and get more of these tools, and people want to be helped and convinced that they need to take that extra step to improve their security. So on the next slide, we illustrate how we worked with Yubico to set up also a promotional offer. So if you Google for Work security key special offer, without having to share a URL with you anymore, just Google for Work security key special offer. You will land on a page where you can order Yubico keys for 50% discount if you're a Google for Work customer. So this is really part of what we think how we can help accelerate the adoption of this technology. Of course, there are obvious questions on the next slide. Back on what I was saying, so there are frequent questions. Does this work with the mobile? The answer, this is a very, very, very frequent question, and the answer is yes, it will soon. I think John can share more about this, but NFC and Bluetooth protocols are being worked on, and John, maybe you can say more in a minute about.
Yeah, I can jump in for just a second. So the Alliance has released both U2F over Bluetooth and U2F for NFC specs, and those devices should be showing up in the market in the near future, and those will give options for using U2F, and to Julian's convenience message earlier, should open up or should accentuate the convenience of using these devices for strong second factor.
Yeah. So then the obvious following question is, should I wait for this to come up? And the answer there is no. You should not wait. Using a key is really enabling your users to take that very first step into these new behaviors around what we call, device-based authentication, or you saw a previous slide John was showing on FIDO Alliance risk-based authentication. And our devices will soon be essential in the way we are identified and the way we are authenticated into our accounts. The key is really the simplest and most reliable of all these devices. The first one, the one you will always have with you, and that will always work, independently of battery life and connectivity. It will be the default you revert to, when these other devices that bring even more convenience, for one or another reason, do not work as fast or as easily as you would have expected them. You will have that key, and this is the moment to get this key into these user hands, because it will be a part of the arsenal of authentication, of the different tools of authentication that we'll be carrying with us. So this first critical step really you can take right now to help your users improve their security and start to move away from passwords, and start to understand how devices will improve our security online. So the next slide is really my last wrap-up slide. The way I like to picture it is that we have a key for our car, we have a key for our home. You simply have a key now for your data, and that makes a lot of sense.
When Apple, Microsoft, and Mozilla will implement U2F support in their browser, in which quarter exactly should we expect U2F implementation for Safari, Edge, and Firefox?
So I think we can. So you want to take it, John?
Go ahead, Julian.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay. So all these three players are actively communicating with the FIDO Alliance. Microsoft is definitely communicating because they're actually chairing the alliance at the moment. So they made a commitment to really have FIDO protocols embedded into Windows 10 very, very soon. So this is definitely coming. Mozilla is also very open and actually currently prioritizing, or the development of U2F compliance in Firefox is part of the prioritization process, and it's just now a question of they need to allocate the right resource to the most urgent projects, and this is taking a little time. But the answer there is definitely yes. It's just a question of when this will happen. And there are. So yes, John.
Go ahead and finish, and I was going to add something.
Yeah, and other players will definitely follow as this critical mass is now reached. We can expect general adoption.
So I was going to say, over the weekend, there were two independent projects that sprung up from developers to create an extension for Firefox to support U2F, and I think it really relit or increased the fire on Mozilla to roll something out, and this U2F in the Bugzilla has jumped up to the #1 request, and I don't think we can put any dates on it. I think that was part of your question, when it'll happen. I'm guessing it's going to be early next year, but Mozilla looks like they're making a commitment, or will make a commitment to putting out support for U2F in the browser. One of the things that they really have to get on is they have no USB HID support, and that's got to be added in there. But I think they are committed, and again, I can't commit to any dates, but obviously it's an astute question. The widespread support among browsers, including Edge and including Firefox along with Chrome, is going to be important for the ubiquity of U2F. And we're also actually having some conversations. I was talking to some people earlier this week about Opera joining on too. So I think the browser manufacturers are seeing the value in this and the added security, and it seems like momentum's building. And so I think this is kind of the stay tuned moment. I really think something's going to start breaking with the other browsers early next year. Promising anything, I'm just kind of looking at my own crystal ball. But it seems that just the interest we've had in the specs and the number of people that have been looking at them and who's been looking at them, that you know, things are going to happen. I know from putting on my Yubico hat that we have shown some prototypes, and we are intent on getting something out. We already have NFC over U2F that works in the YubiKey Neo. You can get our Neo key, the standard key, the longer key, and there's an NFC antenna in there, and it will support U2F over NFC.
Great, thank you. A practical question. The photos show a dongle plugged into a USB port. Is the user expected to unplug the dongle every time they walk away from their PC and then plug it back in when they return? How does this action affect open processing?
How does this affect open what?
Processes.
Okay. So maybe, so it really depends on the form factor of the key you choose. So the longer form factor, the blue key that you saw on the slide, is something that you do insert into your USB slots when you're logging in, when you're prompted to do so. And when the little light flashes, you basically touch the key, and this touch of the key signals to the key itself and the server eventually accepting your login request that you are a physical person behind this screen, and you know you are basically authenticating. So when you're done with that, you can actually remove this key from your USB slot and put it back, put it back in your pocket with your key ring. The nano factor is a bit less intuitive in terms of providing security, because you always leave that key into your laptop. And so the most frequent question you get from people that use that technology for the first time is, how can this be secure? Because if somebody's stealing my laptop, then they can actually log in with that key. Well, the thing is, they would need to have your login and your password and stealing your laptop. So the probability of this happening, is reduced drastically, definitely in view of where the threats really comes from. Like the very large majority of the threats comes from abroad, from people that have stolen your passwords previously and are trying to use it to log in remotely into your account. So when your laptop is stolen, you probably know it very quickly, and then you're able to have your key disabled and basically counter that threat very quickly. So at Google, we are actually pushing the nano format because we believe it is convenience that beats this little kind of almost psychological hesitation of does it really make sense to leave that key in the USB slots.
And to add on to that, I think there's a good best practice. There's also people who will take it out. I'm at a conference this week, and there was a woman sitting 3 chairs down from me, and I looked at, she had a YubiKey, the small nano factor, hanging from her earring. And so I asked her about it. She said, yeah, I take it out, I put it in my machine when I'm authenticating. When I'm done, I'm ready to move, I pull it out, I stick it back, and I hang it back from my ear. And then I noticed when she turned her head that she had a second one, her backup key, in the other earlobe. So there's all sorts of use cases, and for the YubiKeys, and I think all of them are, those two at least fall under best practices. Again, what Julian said, if your laptop is stolen with the key in there, the person still needs to know your username and password in order to get into your account. They still need to know both factors. And then with the tools that Google's built into Google for Work, there is, in the management console, is a revocation features, and you can revoke those keys. You don't have to run to do it, because if the person has your laptop and doesn't have your password, then they're not going to get very far with it.
Great, thank you. Can YubiKey firmware be upgraded by the user?
I missed it. Can YubiKey firmware what?
Be upgraded by the user.
No, and that's a security construct. I mean, if you could upgrade the firmware, so could a hacker. So nothing can be written to the key. There's no malware can get on the key. You know, this is a feature that people like, especially engineering teams. They're able to, if they're putting code, downloading code, working on it, putting it back on a production server or a staging server or whatever, they know that they're not able to get that code back into the machine without using the key. Now that's not a U2F construct, but right now it's a different feature of the key. But the overarching answer to your question is no, because that protects your security. You have no malware that can get on that key.
Thank you. FIDO is focused on biometric comparisons occurring on the device and thus retaining the biometric templates on the device. Is there any discussion about supporting a hybrid model standard where biometric templates might reside in the cloud and or the authentication occurring in the cloud?
You were cutting out there a little bit, and I had trouble hearing the entire question.
Okay, no problem. FIDO is focused on biometric comparisons occurring on the device and thus retaining the biometric templates on the device. Is there any discussion about supporting a hybrid model standard where biometric templates might reside in the cloud and or the authentication occurring in the cloud?
Not that I've heard of. Go ahead, Julian.
We see it as a key feature for us, specifically, that all of the private information is kept with the device, and you know, this is never hosted centrally within the and then this would immediately become a focus, you know, for attackers to try to steal or get to that information. When it comes to, you know, large cloud providers in particular, you know, there would be a question of you know, how much do users want their private information to be hosted, such a critical private information be hosted by anyone else. So to my knowledge also, there is none of that, and to my knowledge, it's actually one of the key benefits that we want to preserve, definitely in U2F.
Great, thank you. Is it not possible to trace the communication between the key and the browser after all the communication is through USB interface?
I did not understand that question. So can you say it again?
They're asking if it's not possible to trace the communication between the key and the browser after all the communication is through USB interface.
Do you mean, go ahead, Julian. I was wondering if they mean sniff the traffic or, you know, steal the traffic. There's everything that moves is encrypted, so you're not.
That's what I think. I assume this is what the question is asking. You know, could there be some sort of a man in the middle attack there, just in between? The answer is that everything, you know, is encrypted, and so whatever could be sniffed or could be captured, you know, is in any case not usable.
Yeah, and you know, for a man in the middle attack, there's an app ID that's wrapped in a key handle. Not to get too deep into specifics, but when you're communicating with a service that you register with a key, you're getting an indication back from that service if this is the service that you've registered with. If there's a man in the middle and you're redirected to another site, you never get that, you can't complete that step because you don't recognize the key doesn't recognize the site. There's no app ID there, and therefore there's no exchange of data or anything that happens there.
Yes.
Great, thanks. FIDO includes US and UK government members already. Have you any plans to start negotiations about Stork project with EU members?
So I think we signed in the German, there's the German privacy or IT security. Oh, go ahead, John. Sorry.
I was just going to say it's the German Federal Office of Information Security. So yeah. They're yes. The general answer is yes.
So the general answer is yes. We're engaging, and yes, but no. There are more than US and UK. There is also Germany, and
yes.
And there's. I mean, I don't think there's any government action at the moment there, but we see very strong adoption also coming from Asia and Japan, right?
Yeah, and we didn't stand up a government vertical and invite them in just to see who would come around. I mean, there's a lot of talk going on, and there is the formal process of putting your name down on paper and committing to it, and so there's a lengthy review in this discovery process they go through to make sure that governments that this is exactly where they need to be and what they're signing up for. So that vertical is born of discussion. So there's a lot of governments that we are talking to.
Great, and I think this will be our last question as we're almost out of time. What is the loss/replacement rate for the security key at Google?
I do not have that number. I'm sorry, I do not have that number. I know that we do. This is part of the calculation, so it is not insignificant, I would say. But if anything, it's in the one digit. I think it is in the one digit percentage. But it's a very vague memory. I'm sorry, I don't have a very good answer there.
Great, thanks, Julian. Thank you.
I can only comment on my own personal loss rate, but I've had one here for a couple of years, and I finally did lose it. I always have a backup. I actually have two, and I moved right to my backup, and I keep a third at home in case everything really goes wrong. I can have that FedEx to me. So, but I do, like any data that is important to me, I back it up, and same with the key. And I think to Julian's comments earlier about keys to your house and keys to your car, there's a second set of those things too. So, and I think that protecting your data with this requires some of the same ideas about how you back up those keys.
Great, thanks. Well, this concludes our webinar for today. Thank you to all of our panelists, and thank you all who attended.